Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com and welcome to live lesson episode number. So I wanted to let you guys know that every second Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be live streaming a lesson over at rockclass101.com. Now these live lessons are going to be hosted by Matt Dahlberg, and each month the topic will be different. So what's fun about the live lessons is that you're not only able to watch live, but you're also able to chat live. So you'll be able to chat with Matt and other Rock Class 101 members. So for more information on how to tune in, click this link right here or go to the site rockclass101.com and do a search for live lessons. Now on that page you'll also be able to watch every live lesson that we've done before. So if you've ever missed one, no worries, they're all there. Now, if you can't make the live stream, don't sweat it, because the day after the broadcast, we'll be publishing it to our YouTube channel. And to go one step further, on the first Monday of the month, which is 1 week before the broadcast, we're going to have a forum post up on the site, which will cover two things. Number one, what the topic for the month's live lesson will be about. And number two, you'll be able to post your questions ahead of time. So that's great news because you're still going to be able to participate. Now to post on our forum, all you have to do is sign up for basic membership, which is 100% free, and that will gain you the ability to post on our forums. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach this month's lesson, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Let's go ahead and start talking about thumb picking. So this is a technique that I think is actually very unique to the ukulele, which is why you don't see a lot of players using it. So to first talk about it, we're going to take a step back and look at ukulele playing in general and sort of through my vision of it. And what I mean by that is when I'm working with new students or working with people and they start asking, what are the things I need to be a great player? And it comes to right hand technique. I think of three primary techniques, and those techniques are strumming, which is anything that essentially involves the pulsating of the hand down and up. There's fingerpicking, which is the use of multiple fingers on strings so that you're able to play more than one string at a time. And then there's what we're talking about here today, which is thumb picking. And thumb picking is very different than picking and very different than strumming, but it's also very similar to each of them because thumb picking is just using the thumb singularly to play the strings of the ukulele. So unlike finger picking, thumb picking can't play multiple strings at a time. And unlike strumming, we're not really doing down and up motions, but it does articulate individual strings as well as and kind of sweep through them too. So it's almost like this little fusion between strumming and finger picking to create this sort of sound. So thumb picking as a technique, just to break it down, is the act of using the thumb anywhere between a perpendicular and parallel angle to the strings to strike strings individually or in sweeping motions. So we could play just our G, our C, our E, our A, any one of those individually, but then we can also play like our G and our C, or our G, C, and E, or our G, C, E, A, or our C, E, or our C, E, A, or our E, A, or our C, E. There are all these little pockets that we can play because it's always going sort of with this downward motion. Now, why would I do this over finger picking? And the reason is to create a more lyrical sound. My personal favorite player to listen to, and the one that I studied the most, in terms of his style of playing, was Jake Shimabukuro. And Jake is a very unique ukulele player because he's really pushed the envelope of what the instrument is and how it's perceived by other musicians. And one of the things that he does so well is he plays things very melodic and with a lot of feeling. Everyone knows about his crazy while my guitar gently weeps strumming, but the real reason I think he's considered one of the best, if not the best, is because of his ability to play ballads and slower songs in a very lyrical fashion. By using the thumb, you can articulate melody notes much more pronounced than if you're finger picking. And the style lends itself much better to trying to create a voice-like sound. So when we think about music in general, and we think about a song that's being performed by a band, it'll have a vocalist and a guitarist and a piano player and a bassist and all this other stuff. And the vocalist oftentimes is going to be playing the melody through what they're singing. And you know that it's the melody because it's the lyrics that go with it. And usually it's a bit louder than other elements of the band, or at least more heard. And the more emotional typically a song is going to be, usually it's a little bit slower and more vocally driven than other songs. And so when we're playing something on our ukulele that we really want to make melodic, using the thumb gives us the expressive ability of more of a vocalist. And the biggest reason for this is a voice is singular. When we listen to a voice sing, it's just the voice. They can't really harmonize with themselves. And so it's very obvious what the melody of a song is when a vocalist is singing it. So when I use my thumb, I get the opportunity to articulate individual notes with a much more powerful finger. My thumb is stronger than any of my other fingers. And so if I were to try to play something as simple as a scale with finger picking, it might sound something like this, which is fine. But you also hear it sounds a little bit mechanical. The reason is because I can't get that same expressiveness with these fingers that I can with the thumb. This is especially true when I'm trying to alter the tone in some way. With my thumb, I can play it about 45 degrees, right about where the sound hole meets the fretboard of the body there. And that's kind of my neutral sound. But just like a vocalist can be loud or soft in their volume and can be more, brash or soft in their timbre or the tone, we can do the same sort of thing. So what if I want to make that scale sound super bright and super, pronounced? Well, I might change my finger angle to be a little bit more perpendicular and move a little bit more down the uke. And that might sound something like this. Over here. And you hear how much the tone texture changes. And I can actually use this to my strength to be able to move the tone as I play. For instance, what if I go like this? I'm getting louder as I go higher and then come back softer as I go lower again. It'd be very difficult to do that same sort of thing with finger picking because each one of these fingers will have to have a conscious effort for the angle and attack. It's much easier to just think with the thumb. Now, one of the reasons why the thumb is more powerful is because it's easier to get a bit of a nail on it. So I do play with some fingernails. My nails aren't super long, but I do have nails on these fingers as well as my thumb that come over a bit for me to be able to use them in my style of playing. And with the thumbnail, it's stronger. I less likely break the thumbnail than I am to break the others. And that allows me to use that nail almost like a guitarist would use a pick. So when we look at other instruments, and we look at like the mandolin, for instance, or the guitar, when they're playing faster individual lines that are meant to be more melodic too, meaning more individual, they're going to be using a flat pick and picking those notes as they go through. And on the ukulele, we don't really use picks much. You can, there's nothing wrong with it, but our thumb gives us sort of a pseudo pick to be able to use so that we can play things in that more articulate style. So you'll notice that when I'm playing, frequently I'm going to be holding my uke like this so that my thumb is striking the string, similarly to if there was a pick at the end of it, but really that pick is more my nail. And it's not just the nail. A lot of times people think that you just play with the nail. It's a combination of the flesh being compressed into the nail that really creates that sort of sound. But to kind of showcase this, I'm going to play one note. I'm going to play the 7 on my A string, which is an E note. And what I'm first going to do is I'm going to pick it with my standard 4-finger picking method. And I'm going to play it at different volumes and try to get different dynamics from it. But I'm not going to move my hand because when you're finger picking, you generally don't really want to move a lot. You want to be in the best spot for the best tone for all of the fingers. So that might sound something like this if I try it. You can hear it's just kind of getting softer and louder. That's about it. But now I'm going to use my thumb, and now I will be changing angles because it's just that single string that's being played. And I'll play it both, I'll play it soft and quiet, and then I'll play it loud and brash or loud and bright, but then I will also try to do brash but quiet and soft but loud, meaning I'm still going to be getting different textures depending on where the thumb is, as well as how much force I put on it. So starting with quiet and soft. Now I'm going to get louder and brighter. Now I'm going to stay bright, but I'm going to get softer. You can hear that that still has an articulation to it despite being quiet. Now I'm going to get louder and softer with the... It's these different sounds where I can do something like this. Something like this. Something like this. Or like this. That can really create that richness. Now, it might be hard to hear when it's just on one string playing one note over and over. But when I'm playing something that I want to really make melodic, and essentially like if a vocalist were playing it, this is the technique that I'm going to absolutely use to create that sound. One of my all-time favorite arrangements is one by Jake Shimabukuro of the Beatles song In My Life, which is a beautiful ballad that talks about life. There's nothing more human than that. And when he plays this, you'll notice he really uses the thumb a lot to be able to enunciate those melody notes. Just to play a little bit of it for you, it sounds something like this. So the thumb technique really allows me to get that type of tone. And for a lot of these lessons here that I do on Rock Class 101, I try to do a little bit simpler arrangements for the left hand, which allows it to actually be more tone-based for the right. And so you'll notice that with different arrangements that I do, you'll kind of see I will assume a position of either in thumb picking or finger picking or strumming to sort of suit whatever that song is. And when I want something very melodic, that's when the thumb is really going to be featured. You also notice I was playing it there, the thumb was all over the place, right? It was really moving to get those different tones. And that's what's fun about is messing around with it to find what sort of tones you like. Now, it's not all better though. The thumb is also a very limited singular thing because it's so singular. If I wanted to play two strings at once, the only thing that I could do is play two strings consecutively. So my G and C, or my C and E, or my E and A, right? Only when I'm kind of going down with that. If I wanted to play my G and my E strings at the same time, I can't do that with just this thumb. And so whenever I want to play multiple strings at a time in different ways, I absolutely have to switch up the fingers that are being used to be able to facilitate that. And that's when fingerpicking really starts to get very powerful as a technique because it allows you to do more with the actual strings themselves. While the thumb allows you to really enunciate individual notes, it doesn't do very well at enunciating multiples, and that's when fingerpicking really will shine. So when you're working with thumb picking, you want to be careful to not try to do things with your thumb that are meant for other fingers. If I were finger picking something that has the notes equally dispersed over all the strings, it wouldn't make much sense for me to try to do it all with my thumb because I'm just going to be jumping around, right? For instance, if I were trying to do something like Here Comes the Sun, which might sound something like, right? And I tried to do all that with my thumb, oh man, I can't even do it, right? Because there's so many things that are taking place. And the thumb is more individual in terms of its sound. And so it won't work very well. Now, at the same time, what if I want to make Here Comes the Sun much more lyrical, much less of the fingerpick style? Well, that might work. It's a little bit subjective, but I saw something like this. So you see how there I made it more into like a ballad, more lyrical and melodic, and then that works really well with it. But if I'm wanting to play it more true to the original, it does not work to simply use the thumb, because the thumb doesn't sound great for that. So the thumb is also a technique that I think is very important for newer players to use when they're really serious about the ukulele. I think that the thumb picking is something you don't really see in the world of the guitar as much, but it's much more common in the world of the uke. And so sometimes teachers that have a guitar background won't really use this technique as much just because they haven't worked with it before. So I think that, especially in beginner arrangements, it's imperative to get comfortable with that so that you can develop your own sort of melodic sound and taste. Zill says, Jurassic Park is the only song I've learned with all thumb, and it has such a different sound than everything else I've tried. And that is perfect. You know, the Jurassic Park arrangement that I did here early on, I really wanted to be a thumb-based arrangement for that reason, so that when you're playing it, you can really strum through these sounds and get it very lyrical and melodic. The thumb also allows you to focus not just on what notes you play, so it's important to play the right notes at the right times, but it's also important in how you play those notes. And the thumb gives you some accessibility to get different textures and sounds when fingerpicking just doesn't get you the same thing. In fact, I would say that the thumb allows you to play simpler things with more complexity, while fingerpicking is more about adding complexity to simple things. It's a little confusing, but all that's trying to say is you can take something very basic and make it sound so rich with the thumb as you're going through. Some other weaknesses with the thumb are sort of a dependency on the individual motion of it from a developing other techniques perspective. So sometimes I've worked with students where they work on the thumb picking too long and they don't depart into finger picking, and they kind of get trapped into playing with their thumb all the time. And while I like using the thumb when I can, you have to know when to break out into finger picking. And the easy way to know that is if your thumb is sweating a little bit trying to do everything and you're trying to play multiple notes at a time, then you'll know it's really not for the thumb. But it is the most, I think, again, lyrical sounding technique. Connie says, I remember your arrangement of First Noel was the first piece I learned to use all thumb, and it was so hard and awkward for a long time. Yeah, just like everything else with the ukulele, this is a technique that requires patience and practice. I mentioned at the start of this live lesson that's one of sort of the 3-tier techniques in my mind, being finger picking, which is the act of playing with multiple fingers, strumming, which is the act of pulsing the hand up and down, and then thumb picking, which is its own separate animal. And so think about the first time you ever finger picked if you started out strumming, or think about the first time you ever strummed if you started out finger picking. It was probably very difficult because that technique is very different. Thumb picking's no different in that way of it being different. It's another brand new technique and new concept that takes a lot of practice to get comfortable with. But I will tell you that I don't think I would be sitting here doing this right now, teaching lessons and being able to do this instrument for a living, if it weren't for my thumb, if it weren't for that technique, because I think that that's really what allowed me to find my own sound as I was working on it, and not just find my own sound, but find a good sound, and trying to emulate players like Jake Shimabukuro, who really use this technique in that very beautifully melodic state. Connie also said, I wondered, why do I play this way? And although I'm still not efficient with it, I hear the difference in sound than before I tried that technique, which I like. Yeah, and it'll only get better as you keep going, especially with a thumbnail. If you grow out a little bit of a nail, you don't need a lot. If I try to get my fingernail zoomed in here, I'm not sure that it will autofocus quite well enough, but it's not super long. It comes over just enough for that to catch. And that's all I really need to get that sort of sound and tone. That also can lead to fun tremolo techniques, but we'll talk about that one another live lesson here. And so thumb picking, to kind of distill it down, it's a more individual melodic style of playing that allows you to enunciate individual melody notes much more proficiently. It also allows you to play things a little bit slower and a little bit richer with your variety of tone that you're getting based on the positioning of the thumb as it goes across the strings. Everybody does it a little bit different because everybody's thumbs are a little bit different. Everyone's ukes, everything is a little different. So this is really a great way to find your tone that you want to play. It doesn't work very well, though, when you're trying to play something fast that uses multiple strings because the thumb can't possibly keep up. So there are other fingerpicking techniques that we have to use to be able to play something more quickly. But it's worth it to try to work on the more melodic playing with the thumb. So Ricky says, my comfort zone is just using my thumb and index when I need a double pluck. That totally doesn't work with Intro to the Rising Sun, especially with the 16th notes. I'm looping one bar over and over, getting used to all fingers. Yeah, and so this is where, that break point happens too, where people oftentimes will just learn with the thumb, and then they'll learn with the thumb and index. And I don't ever use just my thumb and index fingers like that, because I always am trying to use more fingers for more efficiency. So I'll typically use 3 or 4 fingers for when I'm doing something fingerpicked. But then if I can make the transition into the thumb, I'm going to try to just use the thumb. Sometimes you have to do something very fast within thumb picking, and then it's okay to kind of double up with a finger. Although I usually use my middle finger because it creates a better balance for my hand as opposed to the index. But I'm always trying to use the thumb when I can get that more melodic sort of sound. It's very complex going from finger picking to thumb picking, in the same way it's complex going from finger picking to strumming. Again, them being considered those 3 different tier techniques can help give the perspective that it is difficult and new. But cool. So are there any questions at all with this technique and how to use it, or with, anything regarding this sort of stuff? It's a very unique technique to the ukulele. It's my favorite one to use of the 3. I think it's just the one that lets me be the most musical with how I play. But do we have any questions at all? I'll be checking on here on YouTube on the live chat, as well as going to the rock class forum website, where if you ever have questions before one of these lessons, you can leave them down below, and I'll be sure to read them and answer them before we get started. There is one comment in the forums from Lisa DMH, who says, I'm super curious about what Matt has to say, as the thumb approach is one of the key things that differentiates him from everyone else here. I find it harder with the thumb, but maybe because it's not what I'm used to. And so, yeah, I think that one unique thing for me compared to a lot of other teachers is I actually am first and only a ukulele player and teacher. So I played a little bit of piano in the 2nd grade and some saxophone and clarinet in elementary school through just the beginning of high school, and then I quit. But I didn't play guitar, I didn't play bass, I didn't play banjo or mandolin. I picked up the ukulele. And so my process of learning the instrument was very different than most other players. Most of the other players that you see online teaching have some sort of guitar background. And so they have a lot of really cool techniques that I'm not very proficient with, that they translated from the guitar to the ukulele, which is really cool. But I think that this technique is one that I brought from learning the uke from the ground up, and really it being an essential tool to be able to play the songs that I wanted to, which again was a lot of those Jake Shimabukuro style songs, because it just allows you to get that melodic stuff. So really, really quite fun. So let me see if there are any questions at all. Also, we're still doing the vote on the beard, so be sure and leave in the comments below if the beard needs to go or stay. Oh man, the life of internet stuff. Probably going to regret this. All right, so looks like I haven't seen any new messages yet, but again, I'll wait here for just a couple more moments to see if anybody has any questions so that we can work on them. But one more quick summary with the thumb is it's really all about playing it more melodically, right? It's all about being melodic, and that usually means playing individual notes with chords kind of sweeping through to create that sort of sound. So Zill says, can you say more about making the nail work? It's not working for me, and I think it's long enough. So yeah, it's playing with a nail is like it's like introducing another element to the instrument. So it is difficult. The big trick with the nail is making sure that it has a very straight edge to where the actual nail is contacting the string. So I'm going to try to see how close I can get here with my fingernail and with these strings. But when I'm actually striking the string, I'm not just using the nail to pluck the string. That's going to create a really brittle sound. I'm compressing the flesh of my pad into the nail to then create a nice articulate release. And so the nail, if it's too long, just the nail will play. And if the nail's too short, the pad won't ever compress into the nail. So it's finding that kind of perfect area for those two to work. But the most important thing is not your nail's length as much as it is the nail's smoothness. So you want to make sure you're using all sorts of different products. I've got these all over my house, nail buffers, and this is a glass nail file to make sure that my nails are really, really, really smooth, because if they're not smooth, it's going to create a really bad sound as you're going through. You can think of it like a guitar pick, like when a guitarist is holding a pick. If that guitarist had their dog chew on the pick for a little bit and then start playing, tone's going to be awful. It's because all of those little bumps and scrapes and everything else are going to make a sound as it goes over the strings. So with your nail, if it's really smooth, like smooth enough to be blown glass, like if you rub it on your face like this, it feels good because it's so smooth, then you know that you're doing it right. And in some ways, the smoothness is as important, if not even more important, than the shape of it, because it's what's going to lead to the actual attack on the string. So that's always the first thing that I want to say is, use this. And I use these, so I file my nails, which is how I shape them. I do that probably 3 times a week. I do this every single day I play, which isn't every day anymore. 3-year-olds really do something about that. But every day I play, I use this. And if I go a couple days without playing, I use this in between just to keep the nails really smooth so I don't snag it or catch it. It's a high maintenance sort of deal, but it really works. So Connie says, I might be in the minority. I vote no beard. Thank you. I do appreciate the vote. It's anyways. All right. So Zil says, oh God, you're going to turn me into a nail buffer. I'll finally fit in with the women at work. So the irony is I've been teaching now online ukulele lessons for almost 10 years. And I think the most funny thing I can say is that I spend a lot of my time teaching grown women how to do their nails because it's true with this stuff. And my wife, she's probably spent less time doing her nails in the last, since we've been together than I did this week. So this is definitely a part of it to create that tone. And I wouldn't be using the thumb in the way I do without that thumbnail. Now, it's not to say that you can't do it and that the technique doesn't work, but it really contributes to the tone that I'm looking for. So Ricky says, compromise, nix it for spring and summer. Definitely. There's no way it's going to be a year-long endeavor, but I think we're going to go till the end of the month, and we'll see in December's live lesson if it's still here or not. So Connie says, yeah, that's so much maintenance. It is a lot. It's a lot of upkeep. But if you're really serious about the type of tone that you can get from this, it's worth it. Jake Shimabukuro I saw in concert many years ago, and it was sort of funny because I was like, hey, Jake, would you mind if I look at your fingernails? And he wasn't as weirded out as I thought. And when I looked at his nails, they weren't very long, but they were long enough, and they were well kept, and I knew that helped with his tone, and talked to him just a little bit about it. And sure enough, nails can make a big difference, especially with this sort of thumb technique. So that looks like those are all the questions involving the ukulele. I see a few more beard comments, which I'll read another time. But we will, we'll see how it goes. But more importantly, see how this thumb picking goes when you're trying to work on it. It's really important to be able to play lyrically with the ukulele because the limitation the instrument has of its range and size and sustain means that if we're able to really make it sound beautiful, we can kind of impress people with this style of playing. And it's the space between the notes that become as important as the ones that as the notes themselves to really make a beautiful ballad. And this thumb is really what allows it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you can take away some techniques here. This is the rule of thumb. No, that's bad. But it is one of my favorite techniques on the uke, and I hope you enjoyed. If you guys have any questions that weren't answered here, be sure to leave them down in the comments below, or check out Rock Class 101 and check out the forums where you can leave your comments, and every month I'll answer whatever other questions you guys have. So thank you so much for coming. I'll see you guys next month for the next live lesson here at Rock Class 101. Take it easy.